I made a huge leap in 2024 in autocross. I started off the year finishing 73rd out of 100 cars, and by the end of the year, I was in 18th. So here are the things I changed and how much each one helped me. For the last race of 2023, I corner bounced my car. I realized my cross weight was really far off, so I adjusted that to be about 50-50, and that really improved the driving feel of the car, but I still placed 73 out of 100. The first change for 2024 was my front control arms. My original control arm was causing some issues. It made my wheel sit too far inwards so it looked like it was sucked into the fender well. My wheel also sat too far back in the fender well, so there's some rubbing issues on the inside. I couldn't get the caster that I wanted for a good alignment, and I couldn't add a wheel spacer because it would make the rubbing even worse. On top of that, it made my turning radius awful. So I swapped in some aluminum control arms that pushed my wheel forward on the wheel well to get rid of my clearance issues, allowed me to put a 10mm spacer on the wheel to kick it out. This solved my clearance issues, made my front track 20mm wider, and allowed me to get a proper alignment with more caster. However, even though my car felt and looked better, I still placed 73rd out of 100 cars. No improvement with this modification. The next thing I changed were my tires. I was on 3-year-old hard summer Kumhos that were 460 tread wear, and they just squealed the entire time I was racing. They didn't seem to have the grip of the other cars. So I upgraded to some Falcon RT660s, and the effects were immediate. There was so much more grip, the car was turning way better, and there was no way I was not going to improve with these. And sure enough, I improved to 47th, a massive 26th place improvement. After that race, I was inspecting my tires, and I noticed that the outside edge was wearing really heavily, but when I looked at the inside edge of the tire, there's almost nothing. The inside 2 inches weren't even being used, so clearly my car needed more camber to use the inside edge of the tire more. So I added 1 more degree of negative camber, bringing my total up to -1.5 in the rear. That paid off by moving me up to 40th place, but I noticed I still wasn't using all the inside edge of the tire. My next change was to add 1 more degree of negative camber to try and use more of the tire. This would bring me up to -2.5 degrees in the rear. This helped use a little bit more of the inside edge of the tire and a little less of the outside, but I only improved 1 place to 39. You don't know your limits until you go too far, so my next change was the same thing. I added 1 more degree of negative camber, bringing my total up to -3.5 degrees in the rear. Now my car was noticeably worse in a straight line. At the launch and coming out of slow turns, the tires would easily spin because there was less contact in a straight line. This was the first change where I actually lost places and fell back to 44th place. Because of this, I went back to -2.5 degrees, which seemed to be the sweet spot. Up until this point, I had been running high pressures in my tires because of the wear on the outside edge. I was running 37 PSI in the front and 40 PSI in the rear, but after talking to the guys at the track, this was too high. So it was time to start experimenting and dropping the pressures. I dropped them in 2 PSI increments and got all the way down to 33 at the front and 34 at the rear, and that set my fastest time of the day. This dropped me all the way down to 28th place, a huge improvement. My final change for the end of the season was to lower my pressures even more. I wouldn't know how far to go until I went too far. I lowered my pressures in 2 PSI increments all the way down to 28 PSI, where I started to get slower lap times. So I increased it back to 30 PSI, which seemed to be the sweet spot. This put me in 18th place for the day, and was the optimal tire pressure for me. I'm impressed with how far this car's come since it's pretty much a standard build, using 20-year-old Subaru parts. It's a constant battle of finding bottlenecks and fixing those first. I'm currently working on a lot of winter upgrades on the car, which you'll see soon enough, but I'm hoping they'll get me to the top 10. It's going to be difficult though. A lot of people in the top 10 use spoilers and splitters to help with downforce, and also run on slicks, which I'm not going to go to for a street car. So it's going to be an uphill battle. I can't wait to share more of my winter build with you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.